Hello, my spookies. It's your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, here to bring you something spooky from the vault. Many of you are under quite a bit of wintry weather right now, but that innocent snowfall, the kind that makes everything look clean and quiet, well, that is a lie, because right now, a whole lot of you are being buried in snow, and the roads are turning into long, white hallways with no exits. Headlights vanish, tires lose their grip. GPS starts offering shortcuts that feel suspicious. So tonight, we're leaning into it. This compilation, built for roadside and travel nightmares, features stories where the worst part isn't the weather. It's what the weather lets you miss. The thing standing too still at the edge of the tree line. The help that arrives a little too immediately. The back road you swear wasn't there yesterday. If you're listening at home, lock the door and enjoy the storm from a safe distance. If you're listening in the car, keep both hands on the wheel and don't look too long into your rearview mirror, because the road is open and something out there is already on its way. So make sure you're subscribed for a new scary story every Wednesday. And now, let's hit the road. I used to drive a delivery truck until the incident, by Michael Kelso. To Harry, my oldest nephew on the cusp of adulthood and looking for his first job. I've been told you want to drive a truck and are looking for me to give you a good recommendation to my former employer. I'm sorry to say I will not do that. Now, before you get angry or hurt, please listen to why and judge for yourself if you really want to pursue this avenue. I used to drive a delivery truck for a car parts company. It wasn't a bad job. I spent a lot of time alone with my thoughts while driving to various garages to deliver parts. I also listened to a lot of audiobooks as I drove. It was a wonderful way to pass the time. I could get totally immersed in a book as I was driving endlessly boring miles. I never considered myself to be much of a troublemaker. I would go along to get along, as they say. Working for just above minimum wage while driving on icy roads to the middle of nowhere garages was what I did all the time. I didn't complain about it much, at least not to the boss. But I did my job and I thought I did it well. Apparently, not everyone agreed. One day, I came to work and was shown the new addition to my truck. There was a small box that hung down under the rearview mirror. I asked what it was and they told me it was a camera. What they didn't tell me was it was actually two cameras, one facing out toward the road and one facing in toward the driver. They were being installed to make sure the drivers were doing their jobs. Now, I had worked for the company for years without a single ticket. I never had any complaints from any of my customers, and I never put a scratch on any of the trucks I drove. So naturally, I took this camera situation as a personal incitement on my driving and on my moral character. I wasn't the only one who wasn't happy about it, but the company's stance was essentially, get over it. This was back when jobs were harder to come by, and the company said if we didn't like it, we were welcome to get the hell out. Those of us who needed to pay bills and feed our families decided to keep working and earning a paycheck. After a few months, we mostly forgot the cameras were there and went back to doing what we do. Keep our mouths shut and deliver parts. Like we had a choice. The cameras weren't the end of the world that we thought. There were a few write-ups, but they were stupid people doing stupid things. Me, I followed the rules and didn't have any problems. I did what I was supposed to and didn't do what I wasn't supposed to. I know that's a strange concept in today's world. That changed the day the boss told me I was being written up for having a passenger with me. He recited the rule number in the handbook that clearly stated that no passengers are to be in company vehicles unless approved by a supervisor. I asked him what he was talking about and told him I didn't have any passengers. He told me that the main office had a video of me carrying a passenger along with me. He even quoted the date and time of the offense. I thought back and racked my brain trying to remember if I'd stopped and picked someone up on that day. And then I remembered. I've never stopped and picked anyone up because I know it's against the rules. I thought about getting angry and raising a fuss. I thought about telling them that this was precisely the kind of harassment I expected would happen when these damn cameras were installed. Then I remembered their stance of, shut up and deal with it, or we'll find someone else who will. That thought made me calm down and let it slide. I chuckled. Someone must have gotten videos and names mixed up, I thought. No big deal. I know the truth. I shrugged it off and threw the write-up away when I got it. My boss told me it didn't really mean anything anyway. Only major infractions were going to be disciplined. I wondered why he'd even told me about it if it didn't mean anything. Driving in traffic and on snow-covered roads in winter was stressful enough, without worrying about the main office saying I did something I didn't do. The following week, I got another write-up. Once again, for having a passenger. I told the boss I hadn't had any passengers. I told him I follow the rules, and he knows it. Again, he told me the main office had a video of me driving with someone in the passenger seat. At this point, I was starting to get upset. Being accused of something I did was one thing, but being accused of what I've never done and getting written up for it was just too much. I asked the boss to see the video. He pulled it up on the computer. I watched as he worked through the controls, confident that I was going to find the mistake or the name of the person who actually had committed the infraction and clear my name. But that didn't happen. He pulled up the video, and sure enough, there I was driving along, and in the passenger seat was a large, middle-aged man just staring out the windshield like he was along for the ride. My mind was having trouble comprehending what I was seeing. When I pulled myself out of my shocked stupor, I asked the boss what the date was when this happened. He told me, and I racked my brain to come up with an answer to this. I peered closer at the screen to make sure I was the driver. There was little doubt. It was me. I was wearing the gray sweatshirt I wear when I drive. I had one hand on the wheel and the other leaning out the window just like I do when I'm bored. I was wearing my ball cap with the logo of my favorite baseball team. It was me. If only I could figure out who this other person was and what was happening to me. Was I forgetting things? Was I having blackouts and not knowing it? How could this person be in my truck without me knowing? It's not like he was some stowaway hiding amongst the parts in the back. He was sitting 3 feet away from me. That person wasn't there, I told the boss. The camera says he was, the boss said. I don't know what to tell you. I wish I could believe you. You've been one of my best drivers, but we're starting to get into repeat offenses. The company is going to take action soon. Take action against what? I said a little louder than I intended. There was no one there. I don't know who has it out for me or who is playing this little Photoshop trick to get me in trouble, but I swear on a stack of Bibles, that man was never in my truck. I don't know what to tell you, he said. A thought crossed my mind. Can you see where I pick him up? I said. The boss eyed me. You said I have him in my truck. I must have picked him up somewhere. Can you tell me where? He looked at the computer and began rewinding the video. The miles rolled backwards and the man just sat there, watching the windshield. Then, suddenly he disappeared. He stopped the video and ran it forward at normal speed. I came to a stop sign, and the man jumped in. "Pause it," I said. "Where is that?" He looked at the GPS information that was embedded in the video. "The corner of Hamilton and Wright." "What's there?" I said. He looked at the map. "Nothing." I leaned over and saw the same thing. There was nothing around there for at least a half a mile. "That's on my normal Thursday route, isn't it?" "Looks like it." I sat back and thought. He shot me a grim look. "You know this is out of my hands." I stared at him, shocked that this falsehood was going to end up costing me my job. "You're my boss," I said. "How can it be out of your hands?" "The main office wants to make an example." "Out of me?" He nodded slowly. "Should I be updating my resume?" I said. "I would if I were you." I got up, hung my head, and turned to walk away. Then paused. "Would you do me a favor?" I said. He looked at me skeptically. "Depends on what it is." "Could you call the main office and ask the person who monitors the trucks to call me if this ever happens again?" The boss rubbed his chin as he thought. "I guess that could be doable." I nodded and started toward my truck to load for my run. As I drove away from the terminal, my eyes kept darting towards the passenger seat as if I was somehow missing someone climbing into the truck and sitting beside me. That was the way my entire run went that day. I was so distracted I nearly rear-ended a car at a stop sign. I looked over, and the sign said I was at the corner of Hamilton and Wright. I looked to see what was there, and didn't immediately see anything. I leaned forward to see what was beside me, and paused. There was a small graveyard. It wasn't big enough to register on the map. There were maybe 30 gravestones altogether. It didn't even have a fence around it. I was pulled from my thoughts by the car behind me honking their horn. I pulled out and started down the road, lost in the thoughts that were chasing each other around in my head. A graveyard, I thought. There's no one I can see. Could it be I didn't want to finish the thought. I was never into that kind of thing and never really believed in it. When the phone rang, I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Hello?" I said. "This is Carl. I monitor the cameras in the trucks. Look, I know I nearly hit that car, but I'm just a little distracted today." "What? No, that's not why I'm calling." "Okay, you just bored and need to talk to someone?" "No, your boss told me to call you when I saw you with a passenger." "Yeah? So?" I said, looking over at the empty space beside me. "You have a passenger." My entire body turned to ice. "Say that again?" I said. "You have a passenger," he said. I stared at the empty seat. "Where?" I said. "He's sitting in the passenger seat, right beside you," he said, sounding a little annoyed. "Carl," I said, "that can't be right. There's no one besides me." "That's not true," he said, his voice rising. "I can see him plain as day. He's wearing a red ball cap, overalls, and a plaid shirt." I was staring at the seat. When I looked back at the road, there was a truck stopped right in front of me. I stood on the brakes, hearing them scream and protest, but not slowing my truck enough. I knew I was going to hit him. I swung the wheel over as hard as I could, feeling the truck start to tip, then swung back as I slid to a stop at the berm of the road. I looked at the truck sitting beside me, breathing hard not only from the accident I just avoided, but also from the news Carl had given me. "Okay, Carl," I said in a lower voice as if I didn't want my imaginary passenger to hear. "What is my so-called passenger doing?" "He's just staring straight ahead." "I'm going to try something," I said. "Tell me what he does next." I hesitated for a moment, then reached my hand slowly across the passenger seat. I waved it back and forth in the empty air. As I did, my hand felt cold, as if I had just stuck it into a freezer. "Oh my God," Carl said. "What's happening?" "Your hand, it's passing right through him. It feels cold." "Wait a minute," Carl said. "He's doing something." "What?" He's looking at your hand." I immediately pulled my hand back. "What's he doing now?" "He's looking straight at you." I felt the blood drain out of my face. "Holy shit!" Carl screamed. "Get out of there! Get out now!" I fumbled with the door latch, somehow forgetting how to open a door. When it opened, I tumbled out of the truck. I looked back inside, still not seeing anything. Then I put the phone back up to my ear. "Now, was all I was able to get out before my world went dark. I woke to a white room, beeping machines and hoses stuck in my arm. I looked around the room and saw a bouquet of flowers that were starting to wilt. A nurse walked into the room with a syringe in her hand. "Where am I?" I rasped, causing her to jump. "Oh my God, you scared me," she said. "Why?" "Because you've been in a coma for 3 weeks." "What happened?" "Don't you remember?" she said. I slowly shook my head. "You pulled over on the side of the road and jumped out of your truck, right into traffic," she said. "You got hit by a car and sustained several life-threatening injuries." "Am I okay now?" "You really should talk to the doctor about that," she said. "Please," I rasped, grasping her hand. She looked around as if someone was listening, then leaned close to my ear. "As far as I know, you should make a full recovery," she said. "They just aren't sure about your mental state." "Why?" "I heard you were babbling on about seeing things when you first came in." "Like what things?" "Like a How's the patient?" an authoritative voice said. The nurse straightened and backed away. "He's awake and seems to be progressing," the nurse said, straightening her uniform. Good, the doctor said. "Let's see how you do in a day or so. Maybe we can have a little talk about when you first came in." I nodded and tried to fake a smile. The following day I received an unexpected visitor. He was a small man, not too far out of his teens by his appearance. He knocked quietly at my door and started to turn around and leave when I said, "Can I help you?" Yeah, maybe. I don't know," he said. "Okay, let's start with, who are you?" "Oh, sorry," he said, stumbling forward and nearly falling on top of me as he held out his hand. "I'm Carl." I shook it slowly. "Carl," I repeated. "Like Carl from the company?" He smiled. "Like Carl who told me to jump out into traffic and nearly killed me?" I said, tightening my grip. He winced and wormed his way out of my grip. Yeah, about that," he said. "Sorry, by the way, but I wanted to explain." "Explain what?" I said, sitting up so I might get another chance at him. "This," he said, holding up his phone. "It's a phone," I said sarcastically. "I've seen them before, once or twice." "I'm sure," he said, "but it's what's on the phone that you need to see." "Okay, what's on it?" He fiddled with the phone for a moment, almost dropping it twice, then turned it toward me. "What am I looking at?" I said as the screen shook. "Give it a minute." The screen settled down, and I saw it was a recording of me in the truck. I was mesmerized at the sight of the person sitting next to me. I watched as I waved my hand back and forth through his torso. I saw him look at my hand, then look at me. His face suddenly changed. His smile turned malevolent as it grew impossibly large. The grin extended nearly to his ears and his teeth grew 3 inches to where he looked like a shark about to attack. His fingers, they grew into claws and his eyes disappeared into his head, turning as black as the abyss. I saw him reach for me as I fumbled with the door latch, and he swiped his claws at me as I fell out of the cab. He leered out the driver's side window at me, but stayed in the truck, and slowly faded away. When Carl pulled the phone away, sweat was pouring off my forehead. I looked him in the eye and said, "I forgive you." He smiled and said, "You're welcome." We sat in silence for a long moment. "What did the company have to say about that video?" I said. "It was deleted off the server the following day," he said. "So, that's the only copy?" "Yep," he said, holding up his phone. "Do me a favor?" "Sure, what is it?" "Delete it." Are you sure? This is the proof that you weren't lying." "I'm sure. I don't ever want to see that thing again." I quit driving a truck for a living after that. I never again drove past the corner of Hamilton and Wright. I'll go miles out of my way just to avoid it. And I suggest you do the same. Strikeout by Morgan Moore. "How much longer, Dad?" Callie Jensen asked. "For today or in general?" he replied. I guess both," the 11-year-old answered. "Well, we'll probably stop in an hour or so for the night at a hotel. Then tomorrow it shouldn't be much longer to Grammy's," he told her. "Awesome," Callie responded. Her father smiled at her eagerness. Callie and her father were on their way to her grandmother, or, as she had always called her, Grammy's house in Maryland. It was a tradition they had kept every spring since Callie could remember. She and her father loved baseball, and the Baltimore Orioles were their shared favorite team. Her name, in fact, came from one of their more storied players in Cal Ripken Jr. Callie's dad insisted on using the name in any way, shape, or form for his firstborn. So when he and her mom learned they were having a little girl, they decided on Callie. Currently, they were nearing the halfway point of their trip. Callie and her family lived in Ohio, which meant she and her father would trek through the Buckeye State, down through West Virginia, and finally, Maryland. Callie's dad usually considered West Virginia the halfway point, unless they got up super early where they would do the trip in one go. Knowing they would be stopping soon brought joy to Callie, as they usually stopped in the same town, known as Morgantown, and almost always either went to a diner near the hotel or ordered pizza. Then it would be breakfast at the hotel in the morning, and then onward to Grammy's, where, save for some eating out, they dined on her grandmother's homemade cooking, with her chocolate chip pancakes being Callie's favorite. She could almost taste them. Not to mention opening day for the Orioles. Callie returned her attention to the book she was reading, her normal way of passing the time on the drives, unless she wanted to break out her Game Boy Advance and replay one of the Pokemon games for the umpteenth time. If she had her way, Callie would have her mitt and ball with her and pass the time by lightly tossing it and catching it. But her dad had vetoed that since last year, when she nearly caused him to have an accident. The mitt and ball, along with her bat, would have to wait. Callie felt her eyes start to grow heavy as she continued to read. The heaviness soon overcame her, and they began to close. Once fully closed, she was out like a light. Her eyes shot open as her body was jolted away. Her eyes danced around before catching a glance at the time on the radio deck. 6:30 p.m. She turned her attention to her dad, who was cursing under his breath. "Daddy?" she asked in shocked fright. "I don't know what I hit, but 2 of our tires just blew out," he told her. "What do we do?" Callie questioned. "Well, normally when you have a flat tire, you just change it. But I don't have 2 spares, so he trailed off. So then what do we do? She asked with fear creeping into her tone more and more. Well, we're not close to a town yet, he responded as his eyes looked at their surroundings. We're in trouble? Callie asked. Her father does not answer. Instead, he keeps his eyes scanning the area. Finally, a small smile appears on his mouth, and he snaps his fingers. There we go, he exclaims in hopeful joy. Callie turns her attention to where her father was looking. Shortly up ahead was what looked like the start of a driveway. Does that lead to somebody's house? She asked. We'll find out soon enough, honey. Either way, it'll lead somewhere that will hopefully find people and can plan our next steps from there, he answered. Will we make it with the tires? Callie questioned, as her nostrils became filled with the smell of burning rubber. I hope so, sweetie, he said. Callie's father carefully turned the car leftwards into the opening and began driving up the path slowly. While night was not far behind, the sun was starting to lower as dusk took over. The path winded up part of a mountain whose trees, along with the slowly setting sun, left little light for them to use. Finally, they arrived at an open gate. The father and daughter rolled down their windows and poked their heads out. Callie spotted an old metal sign dangling from one of the gate doors. She squinted her eyes to read it. Keep out, she said. What was that, sweetie? Her father asked. There's a sign that said keep out. I think that means we shouldn't go in anymore, Daddy, Callie told her father. The gate is open, though. Besides, even if they don't necessarily want strangers around, we do have a valid reason on our side. We need help, he explained. Are you sure about this, Dad? Callie questioned. It's either this or pulling over on the road, he answered. With that, her father drove through the gates as he switched on the headlights. The pair continued forward as the large house came into view via the headlights. Callie's father slapped the steering wheel in excitement. Once close enough, Callie's dad pulled to a stop and turned off the truck. Dad? Callie said. What is it, honey? He returned. I don't have a good feeling about this, she told him. How come? He asked. It just doesn't feel right going somewhere we shouldn't. Besides, she started as she looked at the surroundings. This place gives me the creeps, she finished. Her father smiled at her. I know, hun. It's a new place and we're in a bad spot. But at the end of the day, I like to believe that people are good and will help their fellow man. Even if the people who live here are angry that we pulled in, surely they'll understand why. Come on, let's find out what fate has in store for us, he said. On that note, her father swung his door open and exited the car. Hesitating for a moment, Callie took some deep breaths before getting out of the car and joining her father. She grasped and curled her hand around his, prompting a smile from him and a ruffle of her hair in response. The father and daughter made their way across the grounds. The duo ascended up a small set of steps onto the wooden patio of the house. At the door, Callie's father took a deep breath, put on his best friendly smile, and knocked on the door. Nothing. He waited for a moment before knocking again, a bit harder. Still nothing. Frowning a bit, Callie's father banged on the door with his whole fist. Not 2 seconds later, the door swung open, violently. "Go away!" a grisly voice commanded. Callie and her dad looked at the man in front of them. He was tall and burly, with a full and bushy black beard and head of dark hair that looked messy and greasy. He was dressed in jeans, a plain-colored t-shirt, an opened-up work shirt, and large boots. Most importantly, and jarringly, to the father and daughter, was the shotgun he held in his hands. "Hello," Callie's dad started. "My name is Nathan Janum. This is my daughter Callie. We were on our way to visit some family when 2 of our tires blew." He points to their car. "I know it's late and probably not what you wanted to have at your doorstep this time of night, but we really need help. My cell phone is close to dead. I do have some cash, though, if you'd be willing to help us." He finished as his hand slides into his pocket and withdraws his wallet. "I don't care. Get!" the man told them with growing menace. Callie shuddered at the look in his eyes. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm just a father in a bad predicament with his daughter. I promise if you let me use your phone, me and her will get out of your hair as fast as possible," Callie's dad said. The man held up and aimed the shotgun right at Callie's father. "I don't give a shit who you are and what you want. Get off my property now. Last warning," he told her father, directly before giving a look at Callie that made her skin crawl. Her father gulped and then sighed and took another breath. "Listen, buddy, I'm not falling for this tough guy who lives out in seclusion in the wilderness crap. We need help. The least you can do if you won't help us is tell us who will." Her father all but ranted. The man's response was a simple one. He raised his aim, pulled on the trigger of the shotgun, and blew the head of Callie's father right off. Blood and brain matter splattered all over the porch, as well as the man and Callie. She turned and looked to where her father had stood a moment prior, only to find him splayed out on the ground with his head blown open and a messy pile of flesh and blood and brain. Callie wanted to scream, but couldn't find the ability to do so due to the shock. Her eyes returned to the man who was loading 2 fresh slugs into the shotgun and locking it into place. He pointed it at her torso. Before she knew what was happening, she jumped off the porch and started running across the grounds. A shot thundered out from the gun, and she saw the ground off to her side erupt. He missed. She kept her pace up, unsure of where to go or how far the man would give chase. Another blast from the gun echoed through the air, and Callie felt the ground right behind her at her feet blown apart. The impact on the ground near her caused her to stumble and then fall forward, slamming face down into the dirt. She felt like she had been punched square in the face and was dizzy. Her eyes fluttered open and stared ahead. Callie became grateful that she landed where she did. Only a few inches away from where she fell was a snap trap. If she had kept running or fell a bit farther, either her foot or her face would have been crushed. She got to her feet slowly and risked a look behind her. The man was off of the porch and started to run toward her. Unsure of what was the best option, Callie looked down and around the ground. In her search, she found an old beer bottle and picked it up. Better than nothing, she told herself. Callie turned to face the oncoming threat, and when he was just close enough, as he started to raise the gun, she reared back her arm and threw the bottle like she was trying to strike out a player to win a game. The bottle collided with the man's face and shattered. He rubbed and picked at his visage to remove any glass that might have embedded itself in his flesh. Using the opportunity to her advantage, Callie sprinted past the man and kept running past the house towards its backyard. Behind her, all she heard was the man. "I'm gonna kill you, you little bitch!" Callie's eyes darted around the backyard. Her options for a hiding spot were not the best. There was a shed, but surely the man would look there first, and it was possible that it was locked. She considered trying the back door, but who knew what horrors were inside? Callie considered hiding under the raised back porch, climbing a tree, or to simply keep running. Then her eyes landed on a doghouse, which looked to be big and dug into a decently deep level. Callie sprinted towards it and slid into the opening. The space inside was tight, but was indeed deep enough to allow her to partially crawl out of view. Lying in the dirt, the tears finally came as Callie processed the last few minutes. Her father had died. No, was slaughtered before her eyes. Her white and black baseball shirt was covered in his blood, and she could feel the wetness of brain matter on her face and in her hair. "Daddy," she cried in her head. She dared not to speak and give away her hiding spot. Callie shook her head. "Get it together. You need to keep it together if you want to survive," she told herself. How, though, was the question. She didn't know fully why she had even chosen to run to the backyard. Her best guess was fear that if she left the property, that the man would pursue her and most likely get her. After all, he lived out here and most likely knew the land better than anybody. Not to mention, it was possible he did leave the property thinking she may have gone back down the mountain and could have closed and locked the gate. She thought about running past the backyard, but was unsure if and when it would stop. It seemed plausible the man might have another gate or fence somewhere behind his house. In her mind, that left one option: the car. Callie knew her father had the keys with him when they went to the door, most likely in one of his pockets. The issue, though, was both being able to get to them before being caught, and the fact that 2 tires were unusable. Callie didn't know much about cars, but she knew driving on blown-out tires leads to driving on rims, which is an even worse problem. Add to that the growing darkness and her inability to drive, which meant it was most likely not a good idea. A few seconds later, though, a fresh idea entered Callie's head and brought a smile to her face. Her baseball stuff was in the trunk of the car, which meant her baseball bat was in there as well. If she could get the keys to the car, Callie could unlock the trunk, get her bat, and have a weapon. True, she knew a baseball bat, especially a wooden one, wasn't the best choice against a shotgun, but it was something. Besides, she told herself, If you could outrun and dodge 2 shots, maybe you can do it again. When he would go to reload, you can go up to him and start beating him with the bat. Her smile turned to a grin as she envisioned getting revenge against the man. It was a risky plan, but the only feasible one Callie could think of. She started to crawl out of the doghouse. She figured it might be best to run around the house the opposite way she came into the backyard, in case the man was waiting for her. Callie considered crawling on the ground to do so, but if there was one spring trap on the premises, there would likely be more. This man clearly took any and all precautions to keep people away. Exiting the doghouse, Callie slowly rose to her feet when a thought occurred to her. There was a doghouse, but there didn't seem to be a dog. Unless... Foss! The man's voice roared. Callie turned her attention to the back porch and saw the man standing there. Next to him was a dog, a cane corso. The moment it heard its master speak, it shot forward like a speeding train towards Callie. The plan to go around the house vanished as Callie began sprinting for her life back the way she came, with the dog in pursuit behind her. How am I going to get the keys and get away before the dog even catches me? The answer was simple. I'm just going to have to. Callie rounded a corner into the front of the grounds and turned to the porch. She ran towards it with the dog barking right behind her. Callie jumped up the small steps and slid to a crash against the wall. She shook it off and hustled to her father and checked his pockets. The keys were gone. The man must have taken them, she said to herself. Before she could think any further, the dog jumped onto her, snarling. Callie remembered when a police officer visited her class and explained to them what to do if a dog ever attacked you. Normally, it would be to stay still, but this was no ordinary dog. Callie shook her body around back and forth to gather any momentum she could. Feeling confident enough, Callie rolled her body to the side and brought the dog onto its side. She then gave it a hard punch to its chest, which elicited a yelp and a momentary retreat from the dog. Callie jumped to her feet. If I want in the trunk, I'll have to use the hatch in the car. She hoped and prayed the man hadn't locked it as she leapt off the porch and ran towards the car. She pulled hastily on the driver's side door and was relieved to find it unlocked. Callie quickly got inside and shut the door. A moment later, the dog jumped against the window, barking fiercely. Callie screamed as she searched for the right lever to pull, pulling on all of them just to be sure. Hearing the trunk click and pop open, Callie breathed a sigh of relief. Then she stared out the front of the car and found the dog standing by the man, his shotgun aimed right at the vehicle. The next thing she knew, there was a bang and the windshield shattered. Screaming in terror, Callie crawled from the driver's seat into the back. There she opened a door and crawled out. Staying on the ground, she made her way to the back of the car, then moved onto her knees. Gripping the latch of the trunk, she pushed it open the rest of the way. And there it was. Her baseball bat. She grinned as she pulled it out of the trunk and wielded it like a sword. Okay, Callie. Time to do either the bravest or dumbest thing in your whole life, she said to hype herself up. Callie stood up and walked around the car to find the man and the dog. The man had the shotgun aimed at her. He eyed the baseball bat in her hands, adjusted his aim, and fired. The bat blew apart in Callie's hand, sending wood all over the ground, as well as into the flesh of her hands, arms, and face. She fell to the ground, ears ringing from the force of the blast, and screamed in agony. She felt more pain than she could have ever imagined. "Foss!" the man commanded again. She heard the snarl, but couldn't find the strength to move. A moment later, the dog was on her and elicited fresh screams from her throat as it ripped and teared into her thigh. With what strength she had, Callie beat on its head to no avail. Her defense only caused the dog to tighten its hold. It shook its head, causing more damage. Through growingly hazier eyes, Callie turned her head and saw that in her right hand she was still gripping the shattered and splintered remains of the bat. She looked at the dog. "Dear God, I'm sorry." In one furious movement, she plunged the remains of the bat into the neck of the beast. She twisted it as she pulled it out and watched blood flow out of the wound. "Barbus!" the man screamed. Almost as if the first stab filled her with more energy, Callie screamed as she repeatedly thrust the broken bat into the dog's throat and its torso. Her body became covered in its blood as life quickly drained from it. Callie shoved the dog off of her and slowly stood up, her body shaking from shock. She looked to where the man was and saw him running at full speed toward her. "You have one chance, Callie," she told herself. The moment the man was in range, Callie shrieked and pushed her body forward and plunged the remains of the bat into the man's hip. He howled in pain and in response dropped the shotgun as he staggered back a few inches. Not wasting a moment, Callie picked up the shotgun and aimed it at the man. She watched as he pulled out the bat and threw it to the ground. His eyes moved to her, and a grin formed across his bearded mouth. "What you gonna do with that, bitch?" he asked tauntingly. "I'm going to shoot you just like you did my dad," Callie retorted. The man's grin widened. "Really now? Sure you have enough strength to do it?" "Uh-huh," she answered, knowing her strength was indeed fading fast. "Are you sure it's loaded?" the man questioned. "Wha?" Callie responded. The man chuckled. "What makes you so sure it's loaded? After all, you were in La La Land getting mauled by my dog. So how do you know if I ever loaded it again?" Of course you did," Callie says back to him, but admits in her head that the man raises a viable point. "Really now? You bet on it being loaded?" he taunts. "Yeah," she squeaks out. "Well, what about this one?" the man said as he reached behind him and brandishes a pistol, aiming it at Callie. You have another gun?" Callie questioned in genuine surprise. "Course I do. Be prepared to protect yourself and whatnot," the man answered with a menacing glee. Silence fell between the two, with only the sound of nature filling the space between them. They stare each other down, each one waiting for the other to make the first move. So, you really want to bet your life on that shotgun being loaded? The man asked. Finding she had little strength left to speak, Callie nodded her head to say that she does. Well, I guess we'll find out then, the man said. They let silence fall over them once more as they listened to crickets and other nocturnal sounds. Their fingers each squeeze and then pull back on their respective triggers. There was a bang and the odor of gun smoke as it filled the night. Roadkill by Travis VanHoose. Lucas Riggs was on top of the world. For years he had struggled to make it as a professional photographer, a career he believed he was destined for. Yet, he had never made a sale like the one he had just closed. He attributed his sudden success to the unorthodox and disturbing subject matter of his latest series of photographs. Multiple buyers had placed competitive bids on the series, resulting in a crisp check for $100,000 folded neatly in his back pocket. It's been a long time coming, Lucas thought. He always knew he was talented and could hardly believe it had taken until age 33 to get his first big break. He had flown home to Ohio with a shit-eating grin plastered on his face. He was eager to spread the word of his good fortune. His few friends would refer to him as arrogant. They believed he expected the world to hand him everything on a silver platter, and his obsession with status defined him. They all knew he was living life on his parents' dime. Those in the art world despised him. Lucas had a habit of dismissing their work as amateurish and lacking inspiration, even though he had not sold a single piece since college. He was a hypocrite with many enemies. Lucas Riggs's arrogance extended far beyond his photography, seeping into every aspect of his life, especially his interactions with women. Lucas believed he was God's gift to women and would seethe with rage whenever he was rejected. When he looked in the mirror, he saw a masterpiece and couldn't understand why any woman would ever consider turning him down. He believed they should feel honored to be in his presence. When a woman rejected him, he always found a way to get his revenge. He wasn't violent by nature, but he acted out when he felt slighted. Once, he had been snubbed by a girl at a bar when he saw her kissing another guy. Recognizing the car she drove to the bar, he slashed all 4 tires with the switchblade he always carried. Physically, Lucas was undeniably attractive. He worked out and took care of his body. He had well-defined muscles and a strong jawline. His arms were covered with expensive tattoos. His smile revealed full lips, perfect teeth, and deep dimples. His eyebrows and lashes were dark and striking, framing his hazel eyes. His hair, short on the sides and tousled on top, seemed casually perfect, though he spent at least half an hour each morning creating the just-rolled-out-of-bed look. Rolling down the window of his red BMW, Lucas lit a cigarette and cranked up the stereo. An old rock tune blasted through the speakers as he drummed his fingers in time with the music on the steering wheel. The cocaine he had snorted in the airport parking lot was still coursing through his veins, and his buzz was keeping him sharp and jittery. He couldn't wait to get home, to keep the party going. The night stretched on as he drove down an old road known as Route 747 that led to Riggs Manor, where he lived with his wealthy parents. He had the guest house to himself and rarely engaged with his mother and father. In his mind, their only purpose was to fund the extravagant lifestyle he had been accustomed to since birth. He never said it out loud, but he couldn't wait until they died so he could inherit their fortune, something he felt he was entitled to. Lucas's father was a day trader, and his mother was a famous lifestyle blogger. Together, they brought in nearly $30 million a year. Lucas couldn't understand why they lived in Ohio. He continuously encouraged them to relocate to the West Coast, but they refused, explaining that they loved the tranquility of their small Ohio town, Hobbs End, believing it kept them grounded. They feared moving to a big city would change them and challenge their humility. Mr. and Mrs. Riggs knew they were solely responsible for Lucas's behavior. They spoiled him as a child and often discussed cutting him off to find his own way in the world, but neither of them could bear the guilt of actually doing it. Towering stalks of corn flanked the road the BMW was speeding down. Lucas's sharp eyes scanned the road ahead. The cocaine heightened his senses, and his wide eyes were overly alert. Deer were notorious for darting out from the sides of the road this time of year, and he had no intention of damaging his pristine BMW by hitting one. Just a month earlier, he hit a deer on this road, but unlike the others who might swerve to avoid the deer, Lucas deliberately hit it for his art. An art professor once told Lucas that there is beauty in everything, even death. He was referring to the vibrant hues of the leaves changing color in the fall. But Lucas took this to the extreme. His mind fixated on Route 747, the desolate stretch of road to his home. It was the kind of road where you could speed for miles before passing another car. For this reason, it was also littered with roadkill. All types of wildlife lived in the woods and fed in the cornfields surrounding the road. Almost everyone who lived along Route 747 had, at some point, hit a helpless critter on this stretch of asphalt. Once a week, a city cleanup crew arrived to collect and dispose of the dead carcasses. Lucas often wondered what type of man could do such a job. In his eyes, public waste workers were beneath him. What a sad fucking existence, he would think with a sneer when he saw them working. On more than one occasion, he'd even tossed an empty bottle from his window at them, his lips curling in satisfaction. Beauty in everything, even death. The professor's words echoed in Lucas's mind the day he pulled his car to the side of Route 747, where he spotted what looked like a dead raccoon in the middle of the road. Grabbing his camera, he slung the strap over his neck and stepped onto the hot asphalt. He could smell the decay as the animal rotted in the beating sun. But the odor didn't bother Lucas. To him, the scent represented art. When he arrived within touching distance of the dead and bloated animal. His brilliant white teeth appeared behind a smile that would have been disturbing if anyone else had witnessed it. Large black flies buzzed around the rotting corpse, and maggots were already feasting on the critter. A black beetle crawled from a hole where one of the raccoon's eyes used to be. Raising the camera, Lucas began shooting the raccoon. The camera clicked, and the film inside rolled as Lucas collected photograph after photograph. He knelt to adjust his angle, then lay flat on the hot asphalt to snap an even lower perspective of the poor animal. As he stood up, he noticed large black-winged vultures circling above. Their slow, ominous movements told him they would descend to feast the moment he left. He made a mental note to return in a few hours to capture the gruesome act of the circle of life. Throughout that afternoon, Lucas captured what he considered beautiful photographs of raccoons, squirrels, a possum, and even a dog. He had found his inspiration in death and believed each photograph was a work of art. But he craved something more, something significant, smashed and strewn across the road, something big and fresh. Lucas spent the rest of the day developing film in his photo lab tucked in the back of the guest house of Riggs Manor. His parents had paid for every piece of expensive equipment. As he watched the pictures slowly develop, he was consumed with excitement. He had never seen something so beautiful as the entrails of roadkill spilled on Route 747. He was amazed at how the white maggots shined in the bloody folds of the dark fur. "This calls for a celebration," Lucas said aloud, patting himself on the back as he admired his work. He poured himself tall glasses of whiskey and coke, and he was thoroughly drunk by nightfall. That is when inspiration struck. A brilliant, twisted idea to complete his collection of photographs. He'd take the gardener's truck, head down Route 747, and scatter apples from the family orchard along the deserted road. He'd bust them open, hoping the scent would lure a deer, maybe even an entire family, onto the road. When the moment was right, he would floor the truck, propelling it forward, metal meeting flesh and bone. He'd then take his camera and create another photographic masterpiece, the perfect work of art to complete his collection. Returning from his art exhibit in California, Lucas hadn't seen a single piece of roadkill on Route 747. He was still 30 miles from home and eager to tell his parents about his good fortune, letting them know he would relocate to California. He couldn't wait to hold up his check and prove to his parents he had finally made it. He'd have called ahead, but had left his cell phone in the hotel room in California. It was being shipped back to Riggs Manor the next day. Up ahead, something caught his eye. This time, it wasn't roadkill. It was a woman, a stunning woman. She stood on the edge of the road with a brown suitcase in one hand and her skirt hiked up with the other. Her leg gleamed in the moonlight and the headlights of his car. Even from a distance, he could see the woman's smile, Her long blonde hair blew gently in the evening breeze. Lucas eased his foot off the gas pedal, pulling the car to the side of the road. He assumed the woman needed a ride, and Lucas was more than willing to offer one. Perhaps even more, if the opportunity presented itself. As the car rolled to a stop, the woman swiftly moved toward the vehicle, her suitcase gone. Lucas barely blinked his eyes before both the front and back passenger doors swung open. The vixen slid gracefully into the front seat, while a strangely dark, rough-looking man slid into the back. "What the fuck?" Lucas froze as both the doors slammed shut. "I thought she was alone." He became instantly nervous, jumping slightly when the cigarette he had been smoking had burned down to his fingertips, searing his skin. He flicked the butt out the window without taking his eyes off his passengers. His eyes darted to the rearview mirror. He had seen enough movies to know he might be in a terrible predicament. "Thanks for picking us up," the blue-eyed vixen said with a comforting smile. "I'm Doris, and that's my boyfriend, Derek." She nodded toward the back seat. "No problem." Lucas's tone was sharp and steady, although he was nervous. His hand trembled as he gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. He didn't like the idea of a strange guy sitting behind him. Too many horror stories about people picking up hitchhikers and being robbed or murdered started this way. "Don't worry, we're not psychopaths." Doris laughed lightly, as if she could read his mind. "We were riding with another guy, but he kept getting handsy, so we had him drop us off. He's not the type of guy Derek and I would invite into our bedroom," she remarked playfully. Lucas's shoulders relaxed slightly. He wasn't against the idea of joining Doris and her boyfriend in the bedroom, as he couldn't take his eyes off her. "Yeah, you have to be careful who you ride with or pick up these days," Lucas said, glancing at Derek in the rearview mirror. He was tall and lanky, and Lucas knew he could take him in a fight as long as the guy didn't have a weapon. He also had long brown hair, which Lucas considered to be sissy hair. He didn't believe real men should grow their hair long unless they were bikers. "Where are you headed?" Doris asked. "Home. I live about 30 miles down the road." Lucas glanced at the glove compartment, wishing his switchblade was in his pocket instead of locked away. "Perfect. We can find our way to town from there. We're just trying to meet up with some friends. They were supposed to pick us up from the bus station, but their car broke down," Doris said with a smile. "Sorry to hear that." Lucas put the car in drive, pulled back onto the road, and speeded down Route 747 once again. He kept his eye on Derek through the rearview mirror to ensure he wasn't up to something sinister, but he sat quietly, holding the brown suitcase on his lap. There was a big white sticker on the side that declared, "Pork sucks." The rock music on the stereo played softly, almost blending into the engine's hum. "I don't even remember turning it down," Lucas thought. "Don't you get scared driving on these old roads alone at night?" Doris asked. "Scared? Should I have something to be scared about?" Lucas knew the cocaine buzzing through his system was most likely making him paranoid. He shook off the creeping anxiety, but remained on guard. "Not really. I like the seclusion. It's beautiful out here," Lucas replied, focusing on Doris. He prayed that she didn't hear the tremor in his voice. This time he couldn't hide it. Something was off about the couple, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He regretted picking them up, but couldn't think of a way to politely get them out of his car. So he stepped harder on the gas pedal, speeding up to get to his house as soon as possible. "I just think it's creepy out here," Doris said, her voice soft. She crossed her legs in a deliberate motion, and Lucas couldn't help but notice. "We heard strange sounds when we were standing alongside the road. I started to imagine spirits lurking in the woods or cornfields," she laughed nervously. "I've never seen a ghost out here," Lucas scoffed. He didn't believe in such foolishness. "I drive this road almost daily, and the grisliest thing I've seen has been roadkill. No ghosts," Lucas replied calmly. "Really?" Doris asked. What the hell does she mean by really? A sound came from the back seat. It was slow, heavy breathing. "If that dude is masturbating behind that suitcase, I will be pissed." Lucas couldn't bring himself to look in the rearview mirror. He was focused on Doris, who shifted her skirt higher. Lucas was sure she was intentionally giving him a show. "Yeah, I hit a deer out here a few weeks back. Tore the shit out of the front hood of the truck I was driving," Lucas said, his voice thick. He felt himself growing hard. He didn't know if it was because of Doris or from remembering how beautiful the dead deer had been when he smeared it across the road. He could still remember that night as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. After scattering apples along the pavement, Lucas pulled the gardener's beat-up green truck to the side of Route 747 and waited with the headlights on. He knew most deer were reckless when it came to light. People said they ran straight toward the light, as if they were drawn to them like moths to a flame. Lucas didn't have to wait long. From the edge of the cornfield, a large deer had emerged, cautious but curious, its legs moving hesitantly across the grass before stepping on to the pavement. It placed its nose against the concrete, sniffing the broken apples on the asphalt. Tapping the apples with its nose, it lifted its beautiful head to stare directly at Lucas and the truck. Then hunger won over fear, and it dipped its head again, nibbling at the apples. Tightening his seatbelt, Lucas eased the truck to the center of the road. The deer didn't seem to notice or care. He pressed the gas, slowly at first, then harder. The deer looked up with only a few seconds left to escape, but was frozen in the headlights. Lucas hit the accelerator, colliding with the deer. He heard the sickening thud, followed by the scrape of the body hitting the bumper as it flew up and over the hood, before landing on the pavement. "Fuck yeah!" Lucas screamed, spittle flying from his lips. He slammed on the brakes, coming to a screeching halt. He placed the truck in park, opened the door, and ran to the deer. It was twitching and making horrible sounds. It was still alive, struggling to get up, but Lucas could see one of the legs was broken and bleeding, nearly torn from the hip. Blood was pooling around its mangled body, but that wasn't enough for Lucas. He wanted more. Slick blood, torn flesh, and twisted organs. Lucas was panting as he jumped back into the truck, put it in drive, and floored it. He felt the dull crunch as the tires rolled over the deer. The brakes squealed as he put the truck into reverse, backing over the deer. This time, the tires crushed its skull and tore its flesh from its bones. Its guts smeared across the road. Lucas killed the engine, grabbed his camera, and ran to the deer. It was still twitching, barely alive. His hands trembled with excitement as he began snapping photos, each one more beautiful than the first. It was the most incredible work of art he had ever created. Amid the frenzy of his work, he didn't hear the faint cries from the cornfield, a noise that was both animalistic and disturbingly human. Was the deer okay? Doris lowered her eyes, then stared out the windshield. Her voice was slow and quiet, almost haunting. Lucas shook away the vivid memory of killing the deer, wondering why the hell she asked if the deer was okay. He thought it was just a pointless animal with no soul or purpose, even if its meat tasted foul. Don't know, Lucas lied with a casual shrug. I got out and it was still moving a little, but I didn't know what to do, so I just drove on, leaving it on the roadside. He didn't want to share the secret of his creative process. That was just for him to savor. You hit a poor, defenseless animal and left it to die on the roadside? Doris's voice wavered with shock. Lucas turned to look at her. Her eyes, which had been a beautiful shade of blue, now appeared almost entirely black, as if her pupils had dilated, erasing all color. It had to be the faint glow from the stereo display, playing tricks on him. Lucas glanced into the rearview mirror and was pleased to see the guy in the back seat staring blankly out the window, uninterested in their conversation. He reached for his cigarette in the center console, grabbed one, and placed it between his lips. Do you mind? He asked. Doris shook her head slowly. Lucas lit the cigarette, taking a long drag to calm his nerves. It was just an animal, he muttered, wanting to change the subject. He tried to switch the conversation to see if the couple was interested in going to his guest house to party for a bit and let Doris show off more of her legs. His mind flicked to the fat check in his pocket. He was no longer afraid of the situation. He wanted to celebrate his big win. Just an animal? What the hell do you mean by that? That deer was a living and breathing organism. It had a family and friends. It even had kids! Doris screamed in rage. Lucas almost laughed at the absurdity. He assumed she was an animal activist or a dirty hippie. He hated hippies. He nervously took another drag of his cigarette, noticing the sincerity in the girl's eyes. At the same time, he once again heard the man in the back seat, breathing heavily. It was a deer, just an animal. No harm was done, Lucas said flatly. He glanced in the rearview mirror as fear crawled up the back of his neck. He froze, his cigarette hanging from his lips as the heavy breathing from the back seat turned into a low, guttural growl. Lucas's heart pounded in his chest as sweat pooled under his armpits. It wasn't just a deer. It was my father, Doris screamed, her voice trembling with fury. "What the fuck?" Lucas hissed. "I think it's time I drop you two off." Lucas wanted to say more, but the words died in his throat. Lucas's foot eased off the gas as his trembling hand reached for the gear shift. Cigarette smoke burned his eyes as Doris's face began to change. Her soft, porcelain skin faded, replaced with coarse, bristly brown fur. Shocked, his cigarette fell from his lips, landing between his legs. He slammed the brakes as her long blonde hair morphed into a thick, brown pelt sprouting from her scalp. Lucas didn't want to believe his eyes as he stared back at Doris's unblinking, black as tar eyes. Doris, the woman, was no longer sitting next to him, replaced by something else. The growling from the back seat increased. Lucas dared to look into the rearview mirror, just in time to see the man Doris called Derek, now with the face and hooves of a deer. His mouth stretched unnaturally wide. "Deer don't have teeth like that," Lucas's mind screamed. The teeth were elongated into jagged, razor-sharp points. Derek lurched forward, the suitcase tumbling aside. Lucas let out a strangled scream as Derek's teeth sank into his cheek. Blood rolled down his neck as the flesh was torn from the bone. His foot slipped from the brake pedal as the car inched forward into the ditch next to the cornfield. "This can't be fucking happening!" Lucas's mind twisted, but he couldn't deny what was occurring. The two strange hitchhikers had transformed before his eyes into deer with razor-sharp teeth. "We are more than roadkill. We are alive. We are man and beast." Doris's distorted voice roared as she bit into his side. Lucas cried out in pain, blood dripping from his torn flesh. Derek spoke for the first time. "She watched you hit him and run him over again and again. Had I been there, you would have been dead that night. We've been watching you and waiting for this moment." "They're deer and people." This was the last coherent thought Lucas had, as Doris and Derek tore him apart with teeth and claws. They ripped open his stomach, spilling his guts just like he had done to Doris's father. When the grisly task was done, Doris and Derek began to shift back to their human forms. Their clothes were tattered and torn as they sat, naked, covered in blood. Doris leaned over, kissing Derek gently. "Thank you, baby," she whispered through tears. Derek nodded, pulling the suitcase from the back seat. He ripped Lucas's still warm heart from his chest and placed it inside the suitcase to bring to the others as proof of their revenge. They scattered Lucas's remains, draping his entrails across the road, recreating the exact scene he had left behind the night he killed Doris's father. As the wind swept across Route 747, Lucas's shredded $100,000 check fluttered free. Later that night, Lucas's mangled corpse would be discovered. The most gruesome roadkill ever found on Route 747 in Hobbs End, Ohio.
Wilson Road by Charles Campbell.
There is nothing like a dirt road in the deep south. The dust kicked up by your truck when you race up the hill after a long day of hard work. The occasional deer that looks back at you curiously when you round the corner is a sight to behold. There are snakes that slither across the dirt road to get to the other side of the woods. You will see hawks scoping out prey from the trees as you move down the dirt road. There are many surprises when you go up or down an old-fashioned, in-the-woods, authentic dirt road. I should know. I grew up in a big house at the top of the hill of one of these roads. A road that was named after my family. Wilson Road. There is one story above the many that stands above them all. It was late summer, and my cousin came running up the road. He was out of breath, and it was a night none of us would ever forget. "Danny, you gotta come down the hill," Tanner hollered. He had his hands on his knees, and he sucked in air like no tomorrow. "What happened?" Danny asked as he rose from his seat on the back steps. "I saw something down there. It took off in the woods. Go in the house and get the shotgun real quick," Tanner said, finally catching his breath. "Was it a deer? You know we can't shoot deer with a shotgun," Danny said, and began to sit back down. "Don't get back on your ass. Get in the house and grab the shotgun. It wasn't any deer. I don't know what it was exactly. I just caught a flash of it, but it was big, and it was an animal." "You probably just saw a dog," Danny replied as he turned to open the door. He'd grabbed the Remington that sat just inside the doorway. What the big house was not low on was shotguns. There were a few Winchesters, a couple of Mossbergs, and 4 Remingtons. Danny grabbed the box of shells and Tanner was waiting for him at the edge of the dirt road. "Come on, I'll show you where I saw it." "I ain't shooting a dog, Tanner. Just telling you that now." "It weren't no dog. Come on." Tanner wasn't a small guy. He was a 17-year-old that had hit his growth spurt at 13. He was 6'3" and still had a little growing left in him. Danny was much smaller in stature by comparison, standing at just 5'6" with a slender frame which made it kind of funny that he was the one in charge of the shotgun. Tanner lumbered down the hill like Sasquatch with Danny following close behind. Tanner pointed. "It was down there near the bottom of the hill off close to the creek bed." "All right then." Danny racked the Remington and stepped off the dirt road and led the way in front of Tanner. The two of them made their way down the creek bed and Danny noticed something right off the bat. There was a litany of broken branches lying about. It was as if someone tossed them about haphazardly all over the ground. They were definitely out of place, as the tree line was approximately 15 yards or so from the edge of the creek bed. "You see anybody dumping their sticks down here?" Danny asked Tanner. "No, there ain't no tire tracks. I don't know why they'd lug all these branches down here by foot. It'd be easier to run them over to Langley Dump," Tanner answered. "Well, these limbs didn't magically fly from the trees. We ain't had no big winds in a couple of months at least, and I was down here at the creek 2 days ago, and these weren't here," Danny said. He did a 360 to see if anything else jumped out at him. Tanner acted as if the limbs weren't a big deal. The big deal was the something he swore he saw. "I don't know nothing about the stupid sticks, but what I saw was standing about where we are now." "You see any prints?" Danny asked. Tanner was looking at the ground, looking for that very thing. "No, but you know how this ground is. It don't hold prints that good." "True," Danny said. "Let's walk up the creek a bit." Danny took the lead and Tanner followed. It was going to be dark soon, but the two of them knew these woods better than they knew just about anything else in the world. "Keep your eye out for moccasins," Danny warned. Tanner rolled his eyes to signify that Danny must have forgotten who he was talking to. Tanner fancied himself as the Moccasin King. He had so many skins hanging on his walls that he lost count of them. "I don't know where it could have gone. We're almost up the old finishing plant," Tanner said. "You think it might have went in the plant?" Danny asked. "Could be. I just got a quick glance before it took off. It was big and dark. You'd think I was going crazy, but I know what I saw, and I ain't smoked any weed in the last week, if that's what you're thinking. That bad shit I got from Frog last time taught me the error of my ways," Tanner said with a nervous chuckle. "Yeah, I don't know where he got that shit. He must have grown that out by Langley Pond. It messed you up pretty bad. Glad it didn't kill you," Danny said, and chuckled himself. Darkness was creeping up around them. They could see the lights from the big house, but it was quickly receding. "Wish I would have grabbed the flashlight out of my truck," Danny said. "You want me to run up there and get it real quick?" Tanner asked. "No, you about died when you ran up there a little while ago. I'm not telling Nana you died of a heart attack while we chased your fake monster to the finishing plant. You got your lighter, don't you?" "Yeah." "We'll just light a few sticks if we need to. We know our way around here." "That we do." There was a crash. It sounded like a boulder was dropped from the second story of the finishing plant. The two of them looked at one another. They knew they were going to find out where the noise came from. Danny broke into a jog and Tanner fell a little behind. The boys came up on the tricky part of the track. They had to cross a narrow pipe on foot. One misstep, and they would go tumbling into the creek below. Danny could walk it in his sleep. Tanner could move quickly across it in the stark light of day, but he took measured steps in the narrow light. He could tell that he would probably have to take the long way back to the hill when they were done at the plant. No way could he balance back across the pipe in complete darkness. Good news is that Danny would take the long way with him. Danny stood at the end of the pipe, patiently waiting on Tanner to finish crossing. He stayed quiet as not to startle his large cousin. "All right, let's go," Danny said once Tanner cleared the pipe. The boys walked the grooved path to the old plant. There was a redneck Hansel and Gretel trail of tossed cigarette butts and rolling papers. The abandoned plant was a cool place for the Valley kids to break shit. Danny suspected the crashing sound they heard on approach was one or more of those said kids screwing around the decrepit building. And it was probably one of those kids that Tanner saw at the creek bed. The sun was almost fully set, with only the last haze disappearing, surrendering the day. It was a good thing they were wearing shoes with heavy soles, because the crunch of broken glass under their feet as they got closer to the building was now prominent, with every step. The darkness finally enveloped them completely, and the night sky was star-filled with a full moon that provided adequate light. There were no clouds in the sky, and that was good. What the boys didn't need was to be stomping around the inside of the gutted plant with zero visibility. Danny was very good directionally, but complete darkness would definitely test his skill. "Let's just stop for a minute and listen," Danny said as he held the shotgun by his side. "I think you saw a buck, Tanner." "It weren't no deer. I know what a damn deer looks like," Tanner whispered angrily. "All right, shh," Danny replied. The boys got quiet and listened. The wind had ceased, and the crickets weren't as noisy. They could hear some of them, but not the overwhelming chorus that was common for this time of the day in this part of the woods. Danny finally broke the silence. "Well, Tanner, I ain't going in there unless we hear something. I don't feel like tripping over something and breaking my neck. We can take the main road back. I know you can't cross that pipe now," Danny said. "Come on, man. I didn't make it up. Let's wait about 5 more minutes, and if we don't hear nothing, then we can scoot back. Just 5 more, okay?" "All right, then. 5 more, and then we're out of here," Danny replied. 5 minutes, then," Tanner said, and no sooner did he get the words out of his mouth, there was another loud crash, and it definitely came from the second floor of the plant. "Let's go," Danny said flatly. The boys entered the plant from what would have been the back entrance when it was functioning. Now there were entry points everywhere that the walls had crumbled. It certainly wasn't a safe place to be screwing around, especially at night. What remained of the old stairs near the back entrance was a precarious stack of bricks that resembled stairs, but there were chunks missing where you would have to really stretch to reach the next usable step. This wasn't a problem for Tanner, but presented a challenge for the shorter-legged Danny. "Let me hold your lighter real quick." Danny motioned for Tanner to hand it over. Danny flicked the bic and carefully took the lead. Tanner stayed close behind so he could grab Danny if he fell backwards. The boys paused when another crash broke the silence. "Shit, it's up there all right," Tanner whispered. "It's not an it. It's just some kids and they'll piss their pants when they see us coming up there," Danny said. "Cuz, I hope you're right. What I saw weren't no kids. Make sure that shotgun is ready," Tanner said. There was no jest in his voice. There was a calm clarity that Danny didn't recognize in his cousin. Tanner was never clear about anything, so this gave Danny some inner pause to hear this unfamiliar tone in his voice. The two of them got to the second floor. Abandoned spindles were spread all around, and the light from the night sky peeked through the many holes and craters in the walls. There were a number of large holes in the floor that would send you on a rapid descent to the first floor if you stepped fully into one. Unintended booby traps that the boys would have to navigate in order to get to the sound source. There was another crash, bricks exploding back in the darkest corner of the second floor. It was completely engulfed in darkness, and Danny was beginning to second-guess their decision to chase Tanner's beast. Maybe it wasn't as imaginary as he'd thought just moments before. "It's back there," Tanner said and pointed. He had no reservation in his voice. It was more determination. Determination that they were going to find out what he saw, and if they needed to pump it full of shotgun shells, then so be it. "Watch your step," Danny whispered back. "Stay close and follow my exact steps. It might still be some kids screwing around back there, and I'm not shooting anything until I can see it." "Gotcha," Tanner replied in agreement and understanding. The wind picked up just a bit. The boys got closer to the dark side of the second floor, and there was another explosion of brick against wall. Danny flicked the bic again and held it out in front of him for just a second. He would have to give it to Tanner to hold the shotgun properly, but he wanted to see if anything would reveal itself before they completely walked into the darkness. The boys heard the shuffling of what could have been claws, but they still couldn't see anything. "Okay then," Danny said, and handed the lighter back to his cousin. "Keep it lit." Danny paused for a couple of seconds, held the shotgun out in front, ready to fire, and hollered out, "Who's back there? Come on out now!" Tanner was steady with the lighter, and his breath was measured. Danny couldn't believe how calm his cousin was. Danny didn't scare easy, but he was beginning to feel something approaching fright, but he fought the urge to be trigger-happy. The boys stepped completely into the darkness, and that's when the red eyes turned to look at them. "Oh shit, shoot it, Danny! You don't need to see it!" Danny fired the Remington into the darkness just below the red eyes. There was a growl of anger that shook the boys to their core. Danny chambered another shell, and it screamed out of the muzzle with nothing but death as its intent. The red eyes were still there, and the beast moved quickly. Danny was in the process of racking the third shell when the barrel of the Remington was sliced in half. The beast was in front of them now. Danny couldn't believe his eyes. It was straight out of the movies. Only, it was so much worse. The creature's eyes were blood red, and its canines were bared. It stood a good foot taller than Tanner and twice as wide. It was haunched on its back legs. Tanner and Danny stepped back into the lit part of the plant, and the creature walked toward them. The boys couldn't just turn and run. They would surely step into one of those death traps. They had to back away, slowly, and hope for the best. As they stepped, the creature continued to follow. They should have just left this thing alone in the dark. Finally, the boys got a full-body look at the monster. It was covered in black fur from head to toe. There was burnt hair and scorched flesh from where the shotgun shells found their mark, but did little but really piss this thing off. It had the ears and snout of a wolf. It was a creature of muscle and destruction. It snarled in anger and had a hunger in its eyes. But it also didn't attack. It looked at the boys. Tanner and Danny were silently making their peace with the Lord as the creature was almost on top of them. They were going to die, no doubt about it. Tanner and Danny closed their eyes and wished for a quick death. Danny could feel the hot breath of the creature on his forehead, and then it moved to Tanner. The calmness Tanner displayed just moments before was all gone. He pissed himself. The creature jumped into one of the craters in the floor and disappeared into the woods. Tanner and Danny kept their eyes closed for another minute or two. Tanner was the first one to open his eyes, and he poked his cousin in the back. I think it's gone, Tanner said nervously. Danny opened his eyes. He was still holding the shotgun. The creature had turned it into the sawed-off variety. Let's just wait here for another couple of minutes before we go back out. Just in case he's out there waiting, Danny said. Let's not. If that thing wanted to kill us, he would have. Let's just get out of here. Get to the road. Get back to the house. And don't say shit to anybody about this. That was a damn werewolf, Danny. Yeah. I wonder what it was doing back in that corner. Well, we are on a need-to-know basis, and we don't need to know. Let's go, Tanner shouted. And that's exactly what the boys did. They went home. They were asleep in their beds when Grandpa climbed up the back of the house and slipped into the attic. He'd transform and be down for breakfast. Grandpa was a good man. He wouldn't kill someone unless he had to. When he transformed, he'd take out some of the deer around his property and then take his aggression out on the many bricks inside of the plant. It was better than ripping out throats and bringing the weight of the world down on his family. Grandpa was happy that the curse had skipped over Tanner, but Tanner's kid, if he ever had them, would be subject to the curse. And maybe that kid would succumb to the animalistic urges of the hunt. Fortunately for the valley, the man that currently lived at the top of Wilson Road did not.
They Don't Drive Cars by Scott S. Phillips.
Aaron had been hoping to sit through the entire Leave It to Beaver marathon on TV Land without interruption, at least until he had to leave for work. But by 2 a.m. his belly was asserting that food was better than the beaver. He'd already exhausted his supply of snacks, not thinking that the bag of salsa verde Doritos should have been held in reserve for just such an emergency. His stomach gurgled aggressively. One of those microwave breakfast sandwiches from Freddy's all night would go down real smooth, beaver or no. It was tough to bail on the show when the Beav's pals were about to dick him by wearing their normal mom-approved clothes to school instead of the cool monster shirts the fellas had picked up the day before, but Aaron could deny his hunger no longer. He slipped on his shoes, grabbed the car keys, and lit out, leaving the TV on so as not to miss a second when he came back. Canned laughter echoed as he shut the door behind him. Aaron knew he was lucky to have a place like Freddy's all night, considering the entire population of Charlton, New Mexico, was about the size of the cast of Leave It to Beaver. He'd been the local paper boy for almost 10 years now, which meant working during the wee hours and sleeping while the sun was up, and Freddy's had kept him in late-night cokes and junk food. During that time, Aaron had never seen another human being in the place. Besides Freddy, anyway, after 11 p.m. He lived in constant fear that the old man would get fed up with it and start closing at midnight. A peculiar wail emanated from Aaron's stomach. Jesus, he said, patting his burgeoning gut and steering with one finger. Getting chubby at 25. Didn't change his feelings about that chicken sandwich, though. The roads were still wet from the most recent rainstorm, which meant another night of wrestling the newspapers into their little plastic sleeves. Aaron hated the things, and was grateful that rain didn't come to Charlton very often. Aaron pulled into the parking lot at Freddy's. As usual, the place was a tomb. Swarms of bugs battered themselves against the lights out front, filling the quiet night with a soft, steady thunking sound. As he stepped out of the car, Aaron noticed the rack of STP near the front door had been knocked over, bottles of fuel additives strewn across the walk.
He paused to clean the mess up. There was a small trail of thick, dark liquid splattered across the pavement, but Aaron couldn't track down which bottle had sprung a leak, and just stuck them all back on the rack. The new electric eye Freddy had bought set off a chime as Aaron entered the store. The old man was nowhere to be seen. "Hey, Freddy, how's tricks?" Aaron said, a little louder than he meant to. After a few seconds, Aaron lifted his foot and thrust it back and forth through the beam of the electric eye, setting off the chime a few more times. "You in the shitter?" He poked his head around a couple of the aisles, then glanced towards the counter. Both restroom keys still hung from their nails. Heading to the back of the store, Aaron tapped on the storeroom door. "Freddy?" He put his ear to the door, listening for some sound of the old man. Remembering the upturned STP rack, Aaron quickly walked the entire length of the store, the electric eye chiming again as he went outside. Rounding the corner of the building, Aaron felt his stomach do the hokey pokey. There was a shitload of blood slung from hell to breakfast back by the restroom doors. Aaron took a couple steps back, stopped, turned his head to stare at the spilled STP. Only it wasn't STP. "Oh, Freddy." He shuffled towards the mess. Crouching, Aaron rested his hands on his knees, his eyes fixed on a fat June bug wallowing in a particularly large splatter. Then the guy came out of nowhere, slamming into Aaron and sending them both tumbling ass over tea kettle through the smeared blood and into the alley behind the store. Rolling to a stop in a puddle of grease-slicked rainwater, the two men came up in a gory tangle. Terrified, Aaron flailed wildly with both fists, trying to fend off his attacker. The guy yelped as a blow connected with his nose. "Asshole!" he shrieked, blood gushing from his nostril. "Let me go!" Aaron continued to sling fists with abandon as the guy struggled to disentangle himself. Wrestling a leg free, he awkwardly kicked Aaron in the chest and scrambled away. "They're gonna get us!" Blood was coursing from the man's nose, dribbling onto his already stained shirt. Aaron sat up in the puddle, finally recognizing the man. "Lucas? What the hell? Wait!" Lucas had made his feet and was sprinting blindly down the alley. "Screw you!" he yelled back. Further down the alley, a rectangle of pale light spilled out through a gap between two buildings, silhouetting Lucas as he fled. Aaron jumped to his feet, wincing at a sharp pain in his knee, and took off after him. Lucas Dutat was the only customer on Aaron's route who always gave him a Christmas bonus, and he figured he better smooth over that bloody nose. As Lucas ran into the strip of light, the creatures took him down. Aaron skidded to a halt, panting, eyes wide with shock. The things, dozens of them, each one no more than 8 inches tall, moved as a unit like a school of fish, flooding out from between the two buildings and swarming over Lucas's thrashing body. He shrieked as he disappeared beneath the frenzied horde. Aaron stared, useless, as the things darted in and out of the throng, tearing at the man. The creatures moved so fast he couldn't get a clear look at them. Even the two standing at the edge of the swarm, heads swiveling like prairie dogs standing guard, seemed almost to vibrate with barely contained energy. As suddenly as they had appeared, the creatures began scurrying away, headed back between the buildings. As the swarm dissipated, Aaron could see Lucas's shredded remains. One claw-like hand uplifted, flesh torn from the fingers. The last creature, one of the guards, darted in and snapped up a treat in its tiny jaws. The thing ran off, a length of intestine trailing behind it. Aaron stood in silence for a long moment. When he released the breath he'd been holding, the sound made him jump. "Holy shit," he muttered. He took a step forward, then froze. One of the things had flitted back into the alley and was staring at him, its tiny head cocking at a dozen different angles, like a dog on Dexedrine. Aaron held his breath again, felt in his pocket for his car keys. Another creature darted in to stand next to the first, their heads moving in unison. Aaron turned tail and ran like hell. Instantly, the two creatures took off after him, the entire swarm spilling around the corner behind them as if caught in their jet stream. Feet pounding the damp pavement, Aaron tugged his car keys from his pocket, fumbled them. The keyring clattered to the ground at his feet, caught to the toe of his shoe, and went skidding across the asphalt to wind up in a puddle of blood. Without slowing down, Aaron scooped up the keys and hauled ass to the car. He flung the door open and jumped in just as the swarm began pouring out of the alley, skittering towards him. He jammed the key into the ignition and slammed the car into reverse as the engine caught. The car laid rubber, obscuring the creatures in a cloud of smoke. Aaron wiped a bloody hand on his pants and gripped the steering wheel as the car bounced over the curb and into the street. Dropping it into drive, Aaron peeled out again. He watched in the rearview mirror as the goddamn things poured into the street, ran through a confused circle, and then scurried off to disappear amongst the buildings again. So now what? Aaron's gaze flicked from the road ahead to the bloodstains on his shirt. He was practically wheezing, sucking air like an old man climbing stairs. There wasn't even a police station in Charlton. Nearest cop was 60 miles down the highway in Estancia. And, what cop would believe Aaron's story anyway? A bunch of quivering little monsters with lots of teeth ate a guy while he watched? He suddenly felt like Steve McQueen in The Blob. He needed somebody to back him up. Aaron spun the wheel, whipping his car into a left turn. He was impressed that the old beater had performed so well under pressure. The car had a tendency to choke and die when asked to accelerate away from a fast food drive-through window. Another left took him on to Howard Road, where his friend Noel lived. There were no curbs out here. Aaron rolled the car to a stop in Noel's muddy front yard and jumped out. Tromping to the door, Aaron banged with one hand and rang the doorbell with the other. After a short barrage of this noise, a light came on in the bedroom, and Noel's angry, narrow face appeared through the parted curtains. Aaron very faintly heard the words, "What the fuck?" and the curtains closed once again. A few seconds later, Noel opened the door, still in the act of zipping his pants. "Man, you better not be waking me up to help you with your fucking paper route," he grumbled, voice thick with sleep. Aaron pushed past his friend, leaving muddy footprints as he entered the house. "I need to use your phone, and you've got to help me." "You wake me up at 2:30 to teach you how to use a phone?" Noel's crusty eyes followed the trail of mud as it extended down the hall and into the kitchen. "Look at that shit, man." He shuffled off after Aaron, shaking his head in annoyance. In the kitchen, Aaron had pulled Noel's phone book from the drawer and was flipping pages. "What's the number for the cops?" "I don't know. 911? Noel said, dropping his bony butt into a chair. "What's going on?" Aaron stabbed 3 digits and waited. "Lucas Dutat got killed by some kind of freaky things, and I think they got Freddy too." You're all bloody," Noel mentioned, finally noticing Aaron's filthy shirt. An operator picked up and Aaron talked fast, hoping to avoid too many questions. "I'm over in Charlton. Somebody's been killed outside Freddy's all night. No, it was animals, coyotes or something, a whole pack of them." He looked over at Noel, who was staring at him like he was a lunatic. About what he expected. "Yeah, I'll wait here for you, thanks." Aaron cradled the receiver. "Coyotes?" Noel asked. Aaron shook his head. "I need you to come with me." "Aw, man," Noel said. Aaron's butt cheeks nibbled the seat cushion as he guided his car into Freddy's parking lot once again. There was no sign of the little creatures, but who knew where the bastards might be hiding? "So what are these things again?" Noel mumbled through a yawn. "I told you I don't know. I didn't get a clear look at them. They're like a bunch of piranhas or something." "But they walk?" "No, they run like striped-ass apes." The car came to a stop in the same parking space it had occupied earlier. Noel reached for his door handle. Aaron frantically grabbed his arm. "Wait." Staring out the window, Aaron unbuckled his seatbelt, then turned to face Noel. "All right. Try to keep quiet and stay with me. Don't go wandering off by yourself, okay?" Noel rubbed a meaty nugget of sleep from his eye and flicked it onto the dashboard. Aaron's lip curled. "Sorry," Noel said. "Did you hear me?" "Don't worry." Satisfied, Aaron lifted his door handle and slowly pushed the door open. The hinges howled like a wildcat in heat. "Shit fire," Aaron hissed. Noel had better luck with his door. It swung open with only the slightest squeak, and he leaned out, peering around. Confident there were no strolling piranha lurking nearby, he stepped out. The two men met in front of the car, backs to each other, mindful of the darkness around them. "Let's get a flashlight," Aaron said. "I don't want to run into those things in the dark." Aaron and Noel entered the store. The chime went off. Both men leaped skyward. They came down, gasping, looking at each other in embarrassment. Recovering, Aaron found the aisle he wanted and selected a cheap flashlight, then went to the counter and grabbed batteries. "I don't know where Freddy is, but Lucas is out in the alley." Aaron unscrewed the flashlight cap and dropped the batteries in. He flicked the light on, played it around. "So, why do we have to go look at him?" Glancing around furtively, Noel snatched a Kit Kat bar. "I don't want to see some chewed-up dead guy." "Just play along, will ya? Let's go!" Aaron started for the door, setting off the chime again. "Jesus!" Noel yelped. "Why the hell did Freddy install this damn thing?" Aaron held the door for Noel. "He's got that thing with his bowels. Kids hang around outside till they saw him go in the can, then run in and steal candy bars." Noel bit into his pilfered Kit Kat and followed Aaron around the corner of the building. His eyes widened when he saw the blood smeared across the pavement. "Man, you weren't kidding." Cautiously, Aaron led Noel to the building next door to Freddy's, where he flattened against the wall and poked his head out into the alley. Lucas's ravaged corpse still lay in the fragment of light not far away. Aaron gestured for Noel to follow, and they stepped into the alley, quietly moving towards the body. As they passed the dumpster, shared by Freddy's and the business next door, Noel poked his head over the rim, looking for anything dive-worthy. "Oh shit," he whispered. Noel pointed into the dumpster. "I think this might be Freddy." Aaron hesitantly approached the dumpster and looked in. A pair of half-empty eye sockets stared back at him. It looked like Freddy's wispy gray hair, but the face had been eaten away. Bits of muscle and stringy flesh dangling from the blood-smeared bone. A crappy set of absurdly white dentures were wedged into the jaws. Those were definitely Freddy's. Aaron turned away, all the junk he'd eaten during Leave It to Beaver rising in his gorge. "He must have crawled in there trying to get away from him," he choked. Noel stared at the Kit Kat bar in his trembling hand. Reverently, he dropped it into the dumpster, returning it to its rightful owner. Not far away, a dog launched into a fit of ferocious barking. "That's Jasper's dog," Aaron said. He took off running down the alley. Noel dithered for a second, then followed. As they raced past Lucas's corpse, the dog's barking was cut short by a yelp of pain. Aaron shot Noel a look and quickened his pace. An 8-foot wooden fence surrounded Jasper's gravel yard. It had originally been a 6-footer, but Riley, Jasper's guard dog, had a habit of jumping it whenever anyone walked by. The dog would then follow them all over town, as long as the petting kept up anyway, leaving the yard unprotected. Reaching the fence, Aaron skidded to a halt. Noel came up beside him. They could hear soft, wet sounds on the other side, and something else. Something scuttling around, moving fast. Aaron handed Noel the flashlight and jumped up to grab the top of the fence, straining to keep any noise to a minimum. He carefully poked his head over the fence and peered into the gravel yard. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "Get up here." Noel clicked the flashlight off and stuck it in his pocket. Jumping, he hoisted himself alongside Aaron. As his eyes cleared the top of the fence, he suddenly wanted, very badly, to go home. I gotta piss," he muttered, unblinking. Jasper's dog, a brawny retriever, was in the process of being hollowed out and stripped to the bone. The creature swarmed over the fallen dog, tiny jaws rabidly nipping out juicy chunks of meat. As before, two of the things stood guard, heads cocking and swiveling in all directions. Aaron stared in bewilderment at the pale-skinned creatures. While they still moved too fast for him to make out any real detail, he was close enough this time to see the fleshy quills that sprouted from their backs, running from between their bulging black eyes to the tips of their thick, plaited tails. Thin antennae, like those of a cockroach, whiplashed above their heads. Aaron thought he could see some sort of filament surrounding their mouths, filtering each bit of the dog as they greedily devoured it. "What do you think they are?" Noel whispered. Aaron tensed at the sound of Noel's voice, ready to beat feet, but the creatures didn't seem to have heard, or weren't interested. "We've been getting a lot of rain," he said quietly. "That doesn't happen much around here. I heard about these little crab things. Their eggs can sit in the dirt for like 100 years, then when it rains, they hatch out, kinda like sea monkeys. Except, they don't drive cars," Noel pointed out. "Sea monkeys don't drive cars?" "I saw an ad in a comic book where they were driving a little convertible." "Man, that's just for the rubes," Aaron said. "Sea monkeys are some kind of shrimp. They don't do shit." Noel was about to argue the point when he slipped, his foot banging loudly against the fence. Their pellet-like eyes locking on Aaron and Noel, the two creatures on guard instantly sent up the alarm, chittering horribly. "Run like hell," Aaron said, dropping to the ground. Noel clung to the fence, staring stupidly as the things swept from the dog's corpse and scurried towards him. His nose bounced off the fence as Aaron yanked him to the ground. "I said run!" Aaron and Noel hightailed it down the alley. The creatures thudded into the fence like ham-sized hailstones, scuffling against the barrier as they attempted to clamber up it. Some of them began gnawing at the wood. This time Aaron held his keys in a white-knuckled grip as he pulled them from his pocket. "They're out! They're out!" Noel screeched, gawking over his shoulder. Aaron glanced back. Sure as hell, the things were pouring through a hole at the base of the fence and running after them. Then his foot sank into something gooey, and he did a faceplant into the pavement, flinging his keys away as he hit. Moving too fast to avoid it, Noel drove a foot into Aaron's crotch, launching himself over his pal and coming down hard. Wincing at the agonizing pain centered in his groin, Aaron rolled onto his ass and sat up. One of his shoes was buttered with thick gore. He tripped over Lucas's corpse. "For crying out loud!" Aaron griped. The creatures were about 20 yards away and moving fast, ready to dive into the sumptuous feast laid before them. Aaron let out an exasperated sigh. If he just hadn't eaten those fucking Doritos. Noel propped himself on his hands and knees and screamed girlishly, whipping towards his friend. Aaron noticed the flashlight tucked in Noel's pocket. Aaron looked back at the creatures, imagining them licking their freakish little chops as Noel scrambled to his feet. Aaron tackled him, yanking the flashlight from his pocket. "What the fuck, man?" Noel shrieked. "I thought of something sea monkeys do," Aaron said. He sat up again, aimed the flashlight toward the creatures, and flicked it on, and illuminated the swarm. To no effect, other than that he could now see very clearly what was about to dine on his guts. "I just want to thank you for waking my ass up so I could be a part of this," Noel said. Aaron swung the flashlight beam away from the creatures, putting a circle of light on the wall, making a sudden right turn, and the creatures darted toward the light, and away from Aaron and Noel. Aaron grinned. Playing the light across the pavement, Aaron led the swarm of flesh-eaters on a winding chase back and forth in the alley. The things had seemingly forgot their prey, intent only on capturing that dot of light. Noel watched the creatures zip about, his mouth hanging open. "Who do we know that has a basement?" Aaron asked. 20 minutes later, Aaron and Noel were walking up the drive to Phil Gomez's place with a shitload of nasty creatures in tow. The things hadn't veered from their stubborn pursuit of the flashlight beam during the entire walk to Phil's. As they reached the front door, Aaron played the light around in the field, keeping the creatures occupied while Noel knocked. It took Phil a few minutes to answer. He was righteously pissed. "What the hell is this all about?" he wheezed, brushing his thickly pomaded hair out of its sleepy dew. "Take a look," Aaron said, gesturing toward the flashlight beam. Phil squinted. "What are those, squirrels?" Noel started to speak, but Aaron cut him off. "Yeah, we need to store them in your basement." "What the hell for?" They're rabid. Bet some folks gotta keep 'em penned up until animal control can get here." "Shit," Phil said. He backed into the house, allowing Aaron and Noel to enter. While Noel ran to open the basement door, Aaron led the creatures inside. Phil bent to stare at the things as they skittered past his feet. "Don't get too close," Aaron cautioned. "Those aren't squirrels," Phil said. "Radioactive," Aaron explained. Phil hissed through his teeth, getting it. Aaron moved into the kitchen and stepped aside. The things obediently followed the flashlight beam through the basement door and down the stairs. When the last one passed, Noel slammed the door shut and threw the bolt. With the hypnotic effect of the light gone, the creatures instantly went berserk, slamming into the door and banging around the basement like a truckload of civet cats with a hose turned on them. I suggest we nail some cookie sheets or something over the door so they can't chew through it, Aaron said, listening to the gnawing sounds emanating from below. A week later, Aaron sat on the taped-together swivel stool at Freddy's all night, his feet propped up on the counter and the portable TV tuned to a rerun of Jenny Jones. In an effort to help out Freddy's widow, Aaron had taken over the graveyard shift at the all-night, relinquishing his paperboy duties. The new paperboy wasn't as regular a customer at the store as Aaron had been. Most nights, Aaron's only customer was himself. Gave him lots of time to snack and watch the tube. He looked up from the TV as the electric eye chimed. Noel strode towards the counter, dripping wet and feeling the gentle buzz of a few after-work beers. "Do you hear about Phil?" he asked, grabbing a Kit Kat bar and tearing the wrapper open. "Aw, shit," Aaron said, worried. So far, nobody had been able to figure out what the creatures were, or where they came from, or whether there were more. No, nothing bad. He's still got all those damn scientists over at his place doing their research thing on the little bastards, but he's stirring up trouble." "How so?" "He won't let them take the things away. Says they're in his basement and they belong to him. He wants to open some kind of monster museum, put them on display, and charge admission. Thinks he's going to put Charlton on the map." Aaron considered it for a second. "Damn, if I'd thought of that, I'd have put the things in my own basement." "You don't have a basement?" Noel said, starting for the door. "You gotta pay for that," Aaron said, indicating the candy bar. Noel grinned and walked out, setting off the chime again. Aaron stared after his friend for a long moment, gazing out into the rainy night. Probably wouldn't be another customer for the whole shift. Abruptly, he left the counter, threw a chicken sandwich into the microwave, and went to the door, where he began the process of lowering the electric eye to radioactive squirrel level.
And that is the trouble with travel, my spookies. You can pack snacks, charge your phone, and fill your tank. But you can't prepare for the moment the road decides it doesn't recognize you anymore. Especially not in weather like this. With snow pounding the windshield, every mile starts to feel like a gamble, and every set of headlights behind you feels like a challenge. So if you've got to travel, please be careful out there. Take it slow. Keep blankets in the trunk, and if you end up on some back road your iPhone swears is the fastest route, maybe ask yourself why. It's so eager to get you alone. And if you're staying in tonight, well, congratulations. You are very fortunate. Now, go warm up, double-check the locks, and enjoy the comfort of knowing the only footsteps you'll hear are the ones inside your house. Probably. So sleep tight, my spookies, and I'll see you very soon.